This is kind of heavy because today I started taking my medicine. This is my medicine, and today I started taking it. The hardest thing it has been for me to do is to tell somebody that I love, because the fear for me is that they might not love me anymore. July 23rd, 2010, I tested positive for HIV. Emotionally, it derailed. There are two very distinct numbers when discussing HIV. First, you have what's called your CD4 count, or your T-cell count, and what that number represents is the stealth of your immune system. Next, you have what's called your viral load, and what that number represents is how much of the virus has replicated itself in your system. If you were to take an auditorium full of people, and not just gay people or straight people, but sexually active people, and if you asked that auditorium with a show of hands, how many in the auditorium have ever experienced sex without using a condom? If they're being honest, the majority, if not all hands, would be raised. This wasn't a random hookup. This wasn't me being wild in the streets. This wasn't me having a revolving door to my bedroom. This was me getting to know a person. This was me trying to fall in love with a person. This was me, guards let down, trusting. I was trusting, I trusted. Ultimately, it doesn't matter how you contract the virus. What matters most are the steps that you take after being diagnosed. Getting into treatment helps control the virus, lessens the viral load in the community. The less viral load we have in the community, the less virus we have to spread. Can you see it? Can you see it? You have several subgroups of people who think that because they are who they are, that they're impervious to this epidemic, when in fact, culture doesn't protect from or transmit HIV. Hair color doesn't protect from or transmit HIV. Gender doesn't protect from or transmit HIV. Race doesn't protect from or transmit HIV. Social status doesn't protect from or transmit HIV. Marital status doesn't protect from or transmit HIV. Because to be honest, this isn't a gay disease. This isn't a straight disease. This is a human disease. This is a human issue. This transcends sexuality. This transcends preference. This transcends culture. This transcends prejudice. This transcends oceans and countries and misconception. 30 years into the epidemic, HIV isn't the killer it used to be back in 1981 when it was first discovered. Instead, what is killing our positive brothers and sisters faster today is shame. The demonizing that shame creates is keeping a lot of our brothers and sisters out of treatment and scaring a lot of us away from getting tested. We won't be able to combat this thing without being proactive in our own care. Likewise, we won't know if we're infected and need care unless we seek testing. You gotta get tested. Do yourself the courtesy and get tested. The scariest thing about HIV are the people who are unwilling to talk about it. HIV can be scary if you let it scare you. But I'm not so much afraid anymore. I don't know if that makes me brave, I don't think that makes me brave. We need to educate our communities, get those who need treatment in treatment. Because the other side of this conversation is reinfection, and the other side of this conversation is co-infection, and the other side of this conversation are a number of things that can agitate your current condition. So if you weren't loving yourself before, love yourself now. This isn't something that I'm ashamed of. I'm not ashamed of this. This is something that, at first glance, I was heartbroken by. I am no more of a leper than anyone else with any other illness that might or might not have to take medication daily. So whether or not you look at me and see a monster of sorts, know that I'm not dying of anything. I'm not dying of anything. In fact, I intend on living to see the cure. And not only is knowing your status powerful, but the steps you take after being diagnosed determine whether or not you are someone who is living with the virus or you are someone who is dying with the virus. So if you are a sexually active human being, consider me John Doe. I could be anybody. I feel like the moment I put this in my mouth, I become an HIV patient. Because there have been days when I wake up and I forget. Like there isn't too much in my day that reminds me unless, I remind myself. But having to take this pill will be the reminder that I have every day at roughly 11 o'clock for the rest of my life. I will have this pill.